Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, good evening. Welcome to Indigo. I'd like to just do a quick pan of the room here. So we have friends over here, and we have friends over here, and friends over here, and Anne is just coming in. Hello, Anne. And we have lots of friends online, so welcome, welcome, everyone. This evening, we're going to be talking about environmental karma, eco-karma, kind of a big deal. She laughs. But we're going to have a guided meditation to begin with, and then, because that's probably going to be a little on the long side and there's quite a bit I want to share, we're going to forego the walking meditation tonight, so we'll do some wiggling to get our bodies woken and adjusted. And then we'll have our Dharma offering and some sharing, and then we'll do announcements and a close. So lovely to see all of your smiles. Lovely to see your smiles here as well. And I'll begin with the formal opening. Noble community. We gather here together with one another, with all humanity, and with all life on earth. We gather here together to deepen our solidity and renew our freshness through mindful sitting, walking, music, and breathing, speaking, and listening. We affirm the capacity within ourselves and all persons of every race, gender, orientation, ability, tradition, to realize peace in ourselves and peace in the world. So without further ado, I'd like to invite our noble bellminder this evening, Miss Deborah Jewin Fraser, to invite 3 sounds of the bell. Please allow your body to rest comfortably in your seat and feel the weight of gravity connecting you to our Mother Earth. Notice all the points of contact that keep you grounded. Breathing in, relaxing into the earth. Breathing out, relaxing into the earth. Bring your awareness to the sensation of your breath. And as you breathe in, just pause for a moment at the top of your in-breath for a beat, and then breathe out naturally. Repeat that, breathing in, hold for a beat, and then out naturally. Please take 3 more breaths just like that, at your own pace. And when you're done with that, just allow the body to return to its natural rhythm and be a witness to your body's in-breath and out-breath. Noticing if it's long or short, deep or shallow. Just witnessing your body taking care of itself. This meditation will be a guided visualization of your breathing. Breathing uses chemicals and mechanical processes to bring oxygen to every cell of the body and to get rid of carbon dioxide. Our body needs oxygen to obtain energy to fuel all our living processes. Carbon dioxide is a waste product of that process. The respiratory system brings air from the environment around us into the lungs and facilitates a gas exchange both in the lungs and within all the cells of our body. Each of us needs energy to fuel all the activities in our body, such as contracting muscles and maintaining a resting potential in our neurons. and our bodies work to obtain the energy we use. Green plants take their energy directly from sunlight and convert it into carbohydrates or sugars. We cannot do that, but we can use the energy stored in carbohydrates to fuel all other reactions in our bodies. To do this, we need to combine sugar with oxygen. We therefore need to accumulate both sugar and oxygen. As a matter of fact, humans spend much of our energy obtaining the sugar and oxygen that we need to produce energy. We source carbohydrates from green plants or animals that have eaten green plants, and we source oxygen right from the air. Green plants release oxygen as a waste product of photosynthesis, and we use that oxygen to fuel our metabolic reactions, releasing carbon dioxide as our waste product. Plants use our waste as their source, their carbon source, for making carbohydrates. We collaborate with green plants. Visualize the trees releasing carbon dioxide and oxygen. Visualize the trees releasing oxygen that we breathe in. Visualize your body releasing carbon dioxide that the trees take in. Our lungs supply oxygen from the outside air to the cells of our body via our blood and cardiovascular system. As we breathe in, oxygen enters the lungs and diffuses into the blood. It is taken then to the heart and pumped into the cells. At the same time, the carbon dioxide waste from the breakdown of sugars in the cells diffuses into the blood and then diffuses from the blood into the lungs and is expelled as we breathe out. One gas, oxygen, is exchanged for another carbon dioxide. This exchange of gases takes place both in the lungs and in every cell of our body. Our respiratory system has two zones, a conduction zone and a respiratory zone. The conduction zone brings air from the external environment to the lungs via a series of tubes through which the air travels. The tubes are the nasal cavity. See if you can visualize the nasal cavity. The pharynx, which is the part of the throat behind the mouth and nasal cavity. The larynx, which is the voice box. The trachea, or the windpipe. And the bronchi, or bronchioles. Aside from carrying air to the lungs, these tubes also warm the incoming air, filter out small particles from it, and moisten it to ease the gas exchange in the lungs. Now visualize the pulmonary circuit. The lung is full of capillaries. And this is where the exchange occurs between oxygen and carbon dioxide. Then the blood moves through the pulmonary veins into the heart. the left atrium, the left ventricle. And with the beat, the fresh blood goes through the arteries, rich in oxygen, and into the capillary bed all over the body. The capillaries enter the tissues where the gas exchange occurs. Eventually, the blood is oxygen poor and CO2 rich, and that travels into the right ventricle and right atrium of the heart. And with a beat, that blood travels up into the lungs again to release the carbon dioxide and to accept the oxygen, turning the blood from blue to red. Let's look deeply into the lung tissue. The red blood cells become red because they pass through a very thin membrane between the capillaries and the alveoli, tiny little folds and sections of the lungs. The blood enters and approaches the alveoli full of carbon dioxide, and as it passes the fold in that moist environment, it moves through the walls of the lungs and the capillaries. And the oxygen, the fresh oxygen, moves into the cells of the blood, turning them red. And as we breathe in, we recharge our lungs with fresh oxygen. And as we breathe out, we release the carbon dioxide waste. Now move your visualization to a single cell in your body. It releases energy contained in the chemical bonds of molecules, such as sugars. The food we eat, carbohydrates and proteins, are digested in our gastrointestinal tract into molecules that are small enough to pass into the blood. The blood transports the sugars to the cell, where the mitochondria in the cell breaks up the chemical bond of the molecules to release the energy it contains. Cells need oxygen to be able to carry out that process. As every cell in our body needs energy, every cell in our body needs oxygen. Our bodies are miracles. Without knowing, we change our breathing to match our activity. When we move skeletal muscles, we use energy and therefore need more sugar and oxygen. Muscles have good blood supply, bringing oxygen and sugar and taking away carbon dioxide. As muscles move more, for example, if we go from walking to running, the heart pumps faster to increase the blood supply, and we breathe more quickly to get more oxygen into the blood. The rate of our breathing increases or decreases unconsciously to suit the amount of oxygen our body needs. The depth of our breathing also changes automatically, so a larger or smaller volume of air is taken into the lungs. Energy in our bodies is obtained by breaking the chemical bonds of molecules. Oxygen, sourced from the air around us, is a vital ingredient in the process of energy synthesis. The respiratory system is designed to facilitate gas exchange so that every cell receives oxygen and gets rid of carbon dioxide. Breathing changes throughout the day according to our activity levels. Thank you, everyone. Let's go ahead and shake our arms a little bit, our hands, get that circulation going. Stretching, great idea, Pam. I see you. Like a tree. All right. Drink of water if you need it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that visualization exercise of the breath and the body. It's a complex system. And it's really amazing how our body takes what it needs and releases what it doesn't. And it does it all without us even knowing. So I think it's a wonderfully complex system that really illustrates this deep interconnection we have with our surrounding environment, with our Mother Earth. Because every one of our cells, as we take in oxygen, is actually taking in gifts from trees and plants. And that's what nourishes us. And we, in turn, nourish the earth with our exhales, quite naturally. And it's interesting to me that the Buddha knew this, because he talks about the fact that we are comprised of the 4 elements, the first of which is air. So it wasn't any mystery to him that we're breathing in and breathing out. And he might not have known everything in that meditation about the way that it works and moving through our body, but he certainly knew that everyone is breathing. And when we stop breathing, we stop. So it must be pretty important in sustaining us. The other elements that we're comprised of, according to the Buddha, are air, water. And lo and behold, we now know that we are somewhere between 55 and 60% water. And not just any water, but salt water. We are carrying Mother Ocean in us from our evolution. And the third element that comprises human beings is the earth, thought of as soil and plants and animals and everything we consume to give us calories and energy and nutrition, minerals. And the fourth element is fire. And personally, for a while, I didn't quite understand fire because I didn't feel like I was walking around on fire. But we produce heat. We absolutely produce heat. That process of opening up the molecules and taking the carbohydrates out of each of the molecules at the cellular level produces heat. And that heat can be thought of as a continuation of the explosion of the Big Bang, because we're still burning, we're still manifesting. So this holding, this understanding, looking at our bodies in this way, this is deep ecology. This is not superficial stuff. And I did pose the question in the memo I sent out, which is, so who are we? And one of the answers is we're the 4 elements. Another answer is we are animals. And I don't know about you, but I was a child of the 50s and 60s, and there was a lot of pride in human beings being different from animals, that somehow our consciousness elevated us. I remember being taught things like fish didn't feel pain, and that animals are pets, and animals didn't really have much in the way of intelligence and things. And I don't know, I think about it incredibly differently now. I think about, for example, can you build a nest? Have you ever tried? I was at a program once where I had all of the ingredients for a nest in front of me. And I spent an hour and 15 minutes trying to put together a nest. And I tried everything I could. And the nest did not happen. No one in the room could actually create a nest. And yet, there are nests all throughout the world, especially in the springtime. Can you make a shell? Can you produce and scatter seeds, either in the wind or by producing a little barb to catch on fur that an animal will carry somewhere else to release, to plant? Do you know how to create a beautiful flower like an orchid does? Do you know how to stay in one place for 200 years and grow perhaps 200 or more feet tall in all kinds of weather? I don't know how to do that. But these are all things that are all around us, that are in the plant world and the animal world. And Thai says that every one of these examples is a Dharma lesson in itself, and that we ought to respect that. We ought to listen to it. And that when we practice reverence for life, this is part of it, is that we really are open ourselves to this wisdom, these innate abilities that other beings have that we have no idea how to do ourselves. And there's more. So could you make yourself breathe 24/7? No. Can you consciously regulate the right amount of oxygen that is in your bloodstream, given the fuel you need at every specific level or activity level? No. Can you constantly govern the breakup of the molecules to regulate the carbohydrate release or the energy that every cell in your body is getting? Of course not. But your body knows how to do that. So what does this tell us? Your body is nature. Your body is operating at a level of wisdom that is different from the mind. Your body is a continuation of the miracle of nature that is all around us, and it's doing these things perfectly. So our essence is nature. Our continuation is set into motion by natural processes that we didn't have anything to do with. We didn't create them, we don't control them. And each of us is a prime example of nature's magnificence. And there's more evidence that we're nature. Each of us has 30 trillion human cells, they estimate. Now, can you imagine that every breath that we're taking is nourishing 30 trillion cells? But you have 38 trillion bacteria cells in your body. You are more bacteria walking around than you are human. And bacteria do things like help us digest our food and protect against infection and detoxify harmful chemicals and all those kinds of things. So there's this wonderful symbiotic relationship, but our human cells are indeed outnumbered. And then we have these minds that have the capacity to become one with. And we know from the Buddhist teaching that there is one universal mind that we have the opportunity to tune into. And that when we do, we can access all the seeds of consciousness, everything, everywhere. And that's how we can have this deep knowing. Because when we access that mind of awareness, that singular mind of awareness, we can trust it. And that's the difference between our thinking mind and true insight. We can become one with the mountain, is the old joke, right? where we can feel the mountain's stability and freedom and peace, and that can actually resonate in our own body and consciousness. I have a mama cardinal, and the eggs just opened up, and there's these little mouths like this, and this nest is 3 feet from my back door. And I am one with that mama cardinal. I do not let the dogs bark. I talk to her every time I go out. I try to exude peacefulness and compassion, and she's so far pretty happy. We can be one with people we've never met, for example, in a war-torn country. Now, perhaps our bodies aren't the ones being physically harmed. Perhaps we don't know the exact story of loss, but we can feel in the fabric of our existence what is wholesome and beautiful and what is just so incredibly painful and harmful. And it is upsetting to us because we can be one with people that are in such pain. I one time felt this incredible connection with someone who read my book, which was an unusual story because he was in the Virgin Islands. It's a sailing book. It's about sailing through a lot of these areas. He was in a place where we sailed, and my book has got a lot of disasters in it that we survived. There's a lot of stuff going on. But he was reading this book during Hurricane Irma, and he stayed behind to guard a hotel from a storm. And he was terrified. And he wrote me a letter after Irma passed because he wanted to thank me for being his companion when he was so afraid. And immediately I didn't know it in the moment, but when I read the letter, it's like I was there. I was just very, very moved. I still am very moved by that. So we can be of one mind. We can access the mind of oneness with humans and non-humans and with animate and inanimate objects like the mountain and the bird. The thing about nature that is important for us to understand, one of the Buddhist teachings that's really lifted up, is that the understanding we have about complexes. So we have these superiority complexes, and that's kind of what I alluded to when I said that in earlier days, in the middle of the last century, people really, I believe, generally felt that humankind was somehow superior. And there's this long tradition of us coming to conquer and improve nature. And that the superiority complex is something that the Buddha goes, nah, no, it's not that. And then when I was in grad school in environmental sciences, people were really angry and hated and loathed human beings because we were so inferior to nature, and nature was beautiful, and we were this cancer upon the planet. And so there's this whole inferiority complex, right? And then there's this equality complex, like, well, okay, both of those are extreme. I'm going to be really neutral. We're all equal here, right? And all of those, the Buddha's like, no. You're not superior. You're not inferior to nature. You're not equal to nature. You are nature. In your blood is the air and the soil, plants, the heat, and the water. So we are nature. And we have this habit, though, of othering the planet, of thinking it's something like the environment is something out there, different from us. But we have to bring the insight of interbeing to our understanding of this relationship, that we are so profoundly and so deeply with the planet, that we're not separate. And we are the earth. And as one of my favorite monks says, we are the earth walking. But we do live as if we're separate. We divide humans from nature. We divide people by race and class and gender and age, orientations. And some of the things that I've come to understand is that why we do this, where these roots of this division, this separation come from, is really back at least 500 years. And it's linked to a colonial mindset, which is a paradigm of views and actions that are rooted in such separation that it justifies aggression, greed, exploitation, and ownership. And these are some of the hallmarks of our capitalistic system, of capitalism, that people in the natural world are commodified. And at sometimes in history, this has been taken to gross levels of enslavement, and even now, I think we can see the continuation of this othering, of this separation, of this enslavement in our criminal justice system, in our economic system, and also in the clear cutting of massive acreages within my development, in the fact that we are in the 5th mass extinction on the planet, that the cutting and loss of forests and of other resources, the release of all of this burning of fossil fuels and taking that energy from the ground and literally putting it in the atmosphere, all of those things are done in the name of capitalism and of this misinformed freedom to be able to accumulate wealth. So this view of being separated, of not having consequences for these actions, of buying into the fact that one can hoard and another one can starve, is really been concretized and normalized into our systems and institutions. So we celebrate the richest people on earth, and we try not to let in or take in those who are impoverished and in need of support. This concretization of this view is human-centric, because we can exploit people and we can exploit natural resources. It's white-centric, it's male-centric, it's cisgendered-centric, it's able-bodied-centric, it's youth-centric. All of these things are ways that our system is subjugating and demeaning the value and rights of others. And we gave ourselves permission to do that because in our colonial aspirations, we pretty much monetized everything. And this is the paradigm of separation that we're still living in. Fundamentally, it speaks to the fact that we have no idea who we are. We are living in isolation. We are completely disconnected from our planet body and from one another. We do not know or believe in our own self-worth because we are trapped inside our small selves, these little bodies, as opposed to really knowing that we already belong and that we are part of, not superior, inferior, equally, but we are part of this planet body. So enter karma, right? Karma is just simply the law of cause and effect. This is because that is, this is because that is. Every action has a consequence, and there's no escaping those consequences. So we're in a state of massive climate disruption, where we all remember the fires in Canada last summer, the smoke. We know the heat waves. We know the extinction issues, and this karmic legacy is really the result of this 500 years of exploitation, of separation. So this didn't start with us, but the momentum of these decisions, the momentum of our ancestors' beliefs and views and actions is deeply embedded in us. And it's in our DNA. So, I don't know if you're like me, I'd love to create new karma, right? That's no small thing. But let's talk about that. To create something new, truly new, you have to interrupt the old karma. You can't keep going along with it, right? And the first step is to sort of like get really clear about how this karma is operating in our thoughts and minds and in our society's thoughts and minds, and to free ourselves from the confusion and the distraction. So, I get really distracted. I remember this for a little while and then I go, oh, that hamburger looks good, right? Or, oh, I'd really like to fly over to such and such, or whatever it is. You know, there are things that we do that are part of the old karma patterns. And it is a process of the spirit and of the mind, just like the mindfulness trainings, to train ourselves to see how the old paradigm keeps showing up and how we comply with it. So some of the things that I've become aware of is that I am a restless species. Personally, I'm a restless version of this species, I should say, probably, that I kind of want things to happen now, and I get bored. And if things aren't kind of rolling along the way I want, well, let's lose my intention and I'll go over here and do something else, right? Impatient for results. So if I'm not seeing something changing, well, then, okay, I'll just try the next thing or the next thing or the next thing. And this impatience, this restlessness, it's like we're allergic to just letting something be, letting it be uncertain, letting it be different, let it be unheralded, letting it stand for what it is. And instead, we're just like, release it because it didn't do the thing we thought it was going to do. It didn't get the result we thought we wanted, right? So, oh, okay, well, I'll try the next thing. To free ourselves from the paradigm, we can name what's going on. Like, you know, when I talk about, oh, that hamburger or whatever, well, that's just a form of greed. And if I was in the library parking lot today in Somerville, and I came out of the library and I heard someone talking on the phone, and it was an accent that for some reason made me uncomfortable. And I started to take a wide berth, and I thought, well, you're going to walk straight, Heather, and you're going to release that, because whatever that is about that particular accent, you're going to let it go, because I have no interest in that automatic othering that was starting. We can name our delusion when we see it, that, oh, that's not me, that's them, or oh, I don't like the rain, or, you know, whatever small othering that arises in us, we can catch and start to name. And of course, our complexes, you know, the part of the complexes is, you know, when you feel inferior and all of a sudden you're defensive and, well, I didn't mean that, no, you know, it's like, whew, you're fine. Oh, is the only answer. Oh, okay, that's fine, all right. So naming what's coming up as it's coming up, and all of these things, you say, well, what does this have to do with changing karma? It's changing our mind. It's understanding the processes that are at work. Another thing that I think is really important about this is rejecting our own powerlessness. Because if we truly are earth walking, we absolutely have power to take care of the things that we touch. And as you release the sense of powerlessness, I personally think it's really important to release any signs or measures of success. You know, there's this praise blame pattern. What's kind of a version of that is like powerlessness. Oh, successful. Oh, powerless. Oh, successful. It's like, oh, get off of the teeter totter. Just do, and keep doing in a way that is reflective of your ethics. So you live in a focused way, and you stop living a lie that is stealing our children's future. That's the bottom line for me. There are, we can trace the roots of all of these suggestions to our ego. And the karmic legacy we can trace to ancestors, and also to each of the things that are happening in daily life. On the flip side, those are kind of like the negative things that we can catch. On the flip side, we can lean into our relationships and make them sacred, create connection, and see intentionally our interbeing. See it as a practice. We can be intentional and attentive, I heard when in doing some white awareness work about the example of a people mover. If you're at an airport and you step onto this rubber carriage that's carrying you at a speed towards a destination, you're on this people mover, and when it comes to race, you can say, oh, but I'm a good person, I'm not doing anything, I would never, and all this. But the people mover is pointed to racial oppression, and that's where it carries you. And in order to actually be an ally, to be an accomplice in a more just world, you have to walk backwards on the people mover and get off it. It takes energy the other direction. This is a little like that, because it's the same kind of thing. If we want to fight exploitation, whether it's of each other or of the environment, we've got to consciously and intentionally keep working backwards on this, and centering human life in our thinking and in our choices. And this is perhaps my favorite. We need to understand the power of symbolism. I want to use Greta Thunberg as an example. Now, I'm sure everybody here knows this young Swedish autistic girl who at age 11, 12, sat in front of the Swedish parliament on Fridays, skipped school, and her sign said, I got it translated, her sign said, school strike for climate. That's all it said. And she showed up every single Friday. And she went for like 9 months where everybody ignored her. And then all of a sudden, the media caught on and said, what are you doing? And she said, I don't go to school on Fridays. Why should I go to school on Fridays and do my job when nobody in Parliament is doing their job? We need to strike for climate. And with that, it became, in the course of that very first year, an international movement where students were striking in the hundreds of thousands around the world, because this young, and I want to say autistic again, it's very important because she's so focused. She doesn't get distracted. There's this wonderful documentary series on Netflix that features Greta Thunberg, and she goes from place to place looking at all these climate issues around the world, and she's just this young child, and people speak gently to her, and her whole being is present with this challenge. There's no distraction. And so I am so grateful that this particular manifestation of the earth has taken this particular form and found this particular voice. And the symbolism is what resonates. A child leaving school to defend her own future. And she's trying to do her job, or why should she do her job when Congress is not? The power of signs, I mean, when you think about it, we've got Santa Claus, we've got brand names, these are all symbols of things, a diploma, the American flag, the Edmund Pettit Bridge, a dollar sign, the cross. When I was in grad school, a fellow student of mine did not speak for years because he decided he would not speak until the environmental movement started getting some momentum and things began to shift on climate. This is the 1980s. And, you know, he was more spiritually advanced, I'll say, than I was at that time. And I didn't quite understand what he was doing. I thought, oh, that's a unique choice. And then like 2 or 3 years later, I saw him on like PBS NewsHour, you know, major national news program. And he was talking about his book, and he was now speaking. And it was his life as a silent advocate. It's like, oh, the symbology of that was very special. Just a few other things. If we truly are manifestations of this part of Earth, we got to be happy, even with things a mess, right? We've got to have that be the foundation on which we stand. And we connect with that happiness and that joy by really leaning into that larger self and to knowing who we are as we're doing this work, knowing that we're ultimately completely safe, knowing that we're ultimately, nobody can touch us because we know who we are. And of course, we embrace the 5 mindfulness trainings and live as simply as we can and keep looking and keep looking. So I will stop there. I will open it up to our Dharma sharing. And, you know, I've said a lot, so I invite you to comment on anything that I said or didn't say. I invite you in the memo I sent out before Sangha. I encouraged folks, if they had an opportunity, to identify a personal nature-based emotional resource, something that you can use as a touchstone, something that stabilizes and calms your nervous system, something, you know, related to nature that you go, ah, yeah, that's good. That makes me feel whole, you know. So if you have come up with a resource like that for yourself, you can feel free to share that. Or if you'd like to share anything else about your practice, everything is welcome at this time. So Heather, bowing out. And just for fun, I'm going to invite the folks on Zoom. If you'd like to share first, we'd love to hear from you. And I can turn the screen around so everyone can see you. Thank you.
This is Andrea bowing in. So I did think about, well, first of all, thank you, Heather, very much for the guided practice and the journey that our breath takes. That was pretty amazing journey to go on. And the question about kind of, well, there's two things. One is, I think for me, like it's having moved from a very populous Alpharetta out to the mountains at the top of the north of Georgia. As we were, making the decision to come up here, every time we would just drive up and this just suddenly just be in the mountains, it was just kind of like I just felt like the oxygen was filling me up. Yeah, and it was just like a big, sigh of, I don't know how to explain it other than just all the craziness of the workday kind of flowed off. And so I think just being out in nature has always been, well, I'm wearing my bird shirt tonight, so one of the downy woodpeckers, but uh, being, I love what you said about the cardinal, because for me, um, connecting with the birds has been a great pleasure and a wonderful experience. And I had a connection with some bluebirds that felt threatened, and um, it was really cool that they actually were like kind of saying, "Hey, come help, with this problem." That I literally would fly over to me, fly back to where the problem was, fly over to me, fly back, and so I think the connections are out there if we want to see them. So I know for me, getting out into nature is key, and being able to experience those connections is super important to me. So I really appreciated tonight's Dharma sharing and talk. So thank you very much, Andrea, bowing out. You're muted, Heather.